Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope you had an amazing week and a fun weekend ahead. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. I have a solo episode today, which I'm happy for. And so hopefully there'll be a few people on. We can engage. It'll be a pretty private conversation. I know most people watch this on rewatch, and I will respond there in the comments as well. Today, I wanted to talk about choosing your customers. It's such an important topic. I've had a lot of professional experience in larger companies where, frankly, I had no control over the customers. I was given responsibility for the sales end of things, and generating revenue, all of that. But really, I had very little input into choosing your customers. So I wanted to focus on that a little bit as I've transitioned from kind of corporate senior living to small businesses. I have had a lot of insights on this topic specifically. So I hope this will be a fun conversation. I'm going to go over a few things today. Let me put this on the screen so you can follow along. It's not a word heavy slide as I typically do. So let's dive right in. Okay, first things first. I want to tell you a story about a customer that we've recently engaged with at Bella Grove. So just real quick, Bella Groves is our small business, dementia care and education company based just outside of San Antonio in Bulverde, Texas. And this customer, her mom lives in another dementia care community right now. And what she has been experiencing, I mean, it's a very lovely place. But the relationship between her and the management team have soured over time. And when we completed the visit and the quote unquote assessment, when I called her and said, based on everything we heard, we'd love to invite you to be a part of our community. And she was overtaken by emotion. She got tearful, and I just kind of paused and let the moment settle in. And she said this. She said, "I used to be a joyful person, and I hate that this circumstance has forced me to kind of be on it." The type of customer that is always there, always present, always emailing, always texting. And, she was telling me that she didn't like being that person. She said, "I used to be a joyful person, just like my mom. And she deserves that. I deserve that." What a wonderful thing that she believes that the movement forward to being a part of our community is going to help her to get back to that. And that story for me is a really wonderful foundation for this entire conversation about how to choose your customers and why that's such an important and oftentimes overlooked part of our organization's strategies. So, with that in mind, let's dig into the first major topic. There are three, and here's the first one: clearly defined hypothesis. If you were gonna screenshot something, this one might be it. The right customers advance your story. The wrong customers change your story. When you have a clearly defined hypothesis, you attract the right customers. Um, I would be really interested to hear from you what that means. What does it mean for you to attract the right customers? I'm gonna put that in air quotes because I want to hear what you think right customers means. Um, when I think about Bella Grove, so I'm going to talk about, or I'm going to reference a couple of different things that I do. There are three main things that I do from a professional perspective, all of which are small business or entrepreneurial oriented. Bella Groves is our dementia care community. And the think tank is a small boutique gathering for change makers in our industry. And then I also have an opportunity through my consulting arm to get out and support organizations through leadership workshops, strategy workshops. I love doing that. And I do some speaking and things in the industry. Across all of those or subsectors of my work, this theme of choosing your customers comes up again and again and again. So here's what I mean by a clearly defined hypothesis. For Bella Groves, we are not just a dementia care community. We have a specific thing that we're trying to say about dementia. I was an executive director many years ago, and I really had this epiphany for myself. I was finishing the day, and I met with a family member at our dementia care side of the community, and then I visited with another one and another one. And for some reason, on that day, it struck me the thing that they all had in common was not necessarily that their loved ones had dementia or that they were paying customers of our business. That the real human thing that they had in common was that they all suffered and they all went through trauma through the caregiving experience. And they struggled through all of that for years and years and years before they ever reached out to any senior living community. That's the thing they all had in common. And I think that that kind of was a seed that eventually became the idea for Bella Groves. We are not trying to solve the problem of where is somebody with dementia going to live. That's not the problem we're trying to solve. The problem we're trying to solve is that caregivers and families in particular, when they are entering this caregiving journey in dementia, have no resources. And because of that, because they lack the knowledge, the resources, and the connections to get through this, they have lots of caregiving trauma. And unfortunately, by the time they get to senior living, we are unpacking and unraveling and rehabilitating. And it occurred to me then, why don't we give them this stuff up front? The packaging of senior living in the way, and specifically dementia care, really the proposition here is when things get bad enough for you, we've got a beautiful place for your loved one to live. That is the de facto value proposition of most dementia care. So, what we're trying to do is to recognize that you are a caregiver from the very beginning of the possibility that dementia is in the picture. The majority of the things that we do in senior living, in dementia care, we can actually transfer to that caregiver years and years before they actually get it from us in traditional senior living. So that's our hypothesis. The hypothesis of Bella Grows is if we can level up the caregiver earlier in the journey, then they can live a more joyful life. That's it. That's the simple hypothesis behind Bella Groves. And as a result of that clear story, that clear hypothesis, now we know what type of customers we're going to attract. The stories, I wish I had time to tell you all of the stories of Bella Groves. I put a few photographs on here. Our customers are not the person living with dementia. And I want you to hear that right. It doesn't mean that they are less important in any way. In fact, they are still the most important person in this equation. But based on our business's hypothesis, our customer is the family caregiver. And because we're very precise about who the family caregiver profile is and the fact that they are our primary customer, we've we've moved all of our efforts, all of our execution efforts to that end. We're trying to level up the caregiver. So, who do we attract? We attract customers, we attract family members who want to know more about their loved one's dementia. They engage in our content, they engage in our training, they engage in support group. The bulk of our families that are here at Bella Groves are not the drop off and let me just recover. They're not necessarily in a respite phase, although that is perfectly understandable when caregivers get there. Their mindset is, I want to be an active primary caregiver for my loved one. I just need help. So when you look at, these photos, our customers are the family members. They're the family members engaged in their loved one's story. Um, a lot of the time, when I send in most dementia care communities, you would send an email or some kind of a message saying, "We have assessed your loved one and we have approved for them to move in." I mean, that is not a very compelling customer partnership story. So even the words that we use around choosing our customers, we say, thank you for inviting us to be a part of your care team. We'd love to invite you to be a part of our community. That even just having the foundational mindset that when you choose your customers, it should very much feel like a partnership. A simpler way that we say that is in order for us to get to the outcome we both want, which is your loved one having a joyful life, and for you and us to have a joyful life, then we're going to have to blend our expertise. You, the family member, has the Sherry expertise. You have the Jose expertise. You have the loved one's expertise, their story. we have the dementia knowledge, we have the dementia expertise. And when we put those things together, we've got a shot. We've got a shot at this thing. And because we're very clear about this message, we get the right customers. Later in this discussion, I'll talk to you about what happens when you don't have the right customers. But for the most part, if we had 100 customers at Bella Grows, 96 of them fit this category of a really, really good fit. Now, I want to say that great customers doesn't necessarily mean easy customers. We have tough customers, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. What I am talking about is misalignment in the thing that you're trying to do together, and that is easier to identify. So we'll come up on that a little bit later. But if you can't tell, I'm so proud of the work that we do at Bella Groves because of this. I look at the faces of the people who are here and in our community, and because they know, they feel that they are our customers, they're engaged. They're a part of our community. Um, I just want to call this picture out in particular, this one on the right. This looks like a daughter having a walk with her mom. It's not. It is a one of our customers having a walk with another resident, because she wanted to go for a walk. And that kind of engagement in the community where she's like, I've had my time with my mom, and she just understands our training and our methodology so well that when this resident here on the left was at the door wanting to leave, our industry would call that exit seeking. But because our team and our families even know how we approach that, she said she kind of pointed to one of our caregivers and she kind of signaled to her, I can go. That's basically what she meant. So we opened the door. I was around. Obviously, that's how I got the photo. But for the moment, we just let them walk. And what a, I mean, if you think about that, what a beautiful thing that our customers are exactly a part of our mission. I think this is so cool. When you have a clear hypothesis, your customers reveal themselves. And I think that is kind of the point of this. Okay, let's move on to point number two. By the way, I can't tell if anybody's on here, if it's one person or two or 20. So I won't be able to engage with you unless you comment. So if you have a question, if you have a thought, if you are struck with emotion by any of the stories that I'm sharing, put that in here. If not, Shelby and I are going to have a dialogue back and forth. So Shelby helps me put these events together. She's so awesome. If you ever want to do a LinkedIn live, call Shelby. But if there aren't people commenting, she and I will simulate a conversation because she gives me real great questions too. All right, we're going to move on to point number two. Superfans. There's a book called Superfans. So I'm sure I didn't reference it specifically for this presentation, but I am sure that if you were to go find that book, read that book, you'd get a lot of this as well. Superfans evangelize. They are, they sit at the top of a pyramid. And so I believe this hierarchy is in the book, Superfans. I wish I had put that on the screen here. But basically, if you kind of have a tier of hierarchy of the types of customers that you're going to have, it starts at the casual. The baseline is casual. These are your casual customers. And then above that would be active, your active customers. After that, above that would be your connected customers. And then finally, your super fans. Most organizations, I think, have a good enough business plan that you're going to find the active to connected customers. These are the people in the middle that are generally with it. They show up, they're happy, they give you good reviews. Most of us have these types of customers. The casual customers are the ones that probably don't make a big fuss, but they pay their bills, they pay their invoices, they do the work with you, but there's not much else. And generally, these are the ones who kind of come in first into your organization. But as you create really great experiences for people, they climb up. The goal is to have more and more super fans. So in the first section, I talked about Bella Grows. In the second part, I want to talk about Think Tank. The Think Tank came from really it was a kind of a housewarming party for Bella Grows when we were opening, and we had friends and colleagues from the industry coming by, and they just said, "Hey, we want to be there when you're doing your open house." And I pitched the idea of, hey, while you're here, there's some business like questions and problems that we're trying to solve, and I'd love your help. So I put together an agenda. They stuck around for a few extra days, and I facilitated this event. And I just called it the think tank because that was the name I came up with. I had no intention of it being a thing, but what came out of that was really, really wonderful, and it sparked the idea for what eventually became another business. So the think tank, the very, very first one, the small group work that we did together, the outcome of each of those small group projects was something very helpful for our business. A market validation study, customer personas, pricing study, super helpful. The event ended and that was it. And then people started writing to me and they heard about the think tank and they're like, "What was this think tank? Are you going to do it again?" So we did it in year 2. We didn't talk about Bella Groves, but we expanded it to the senior living industry at large. So small group topics, they still happened. People are putting together deliverables. And now we are about to be on year 5 of the think tank. And each year it's grown. Each year there's been people who come back. Each year there's new people. So when you go back to that pyramid, casual customers, active customers, connected customers, and your super fans, we've got people on all 4 of those tiers. Here's the great thing about your super fans. They don't just evangelize, they don't just tell your story, they convert other people. And there are so there if I put all the photos of all of our super fans, this slide would look ridiculous. So, if you're not on here and you count yourself a super fan of Think Tank, know that I know that. So, here's just a sampling of them. But what's really kind of hallmark for your super fans is that the brand that you build is not actually your brand, it's their brand. Like they literally wear the t-shirt because it's their brand. And so I want to point out a few examples of what super fans do for your business, and how you should be creating more super fans for your business. I think the simple metaphor of, would your customers wear your t-shirt? It's a simple thing. Like, would they wear your logo? And what would they feel if they wore that logo? We've had that happen at Bella Groves where our customers have asked us for a Bella Groves t-shirt. How many dementia care communities could probably say that? That the paying customer, the family member says, "Can I get one of your shirts?" So, Nicole, I got to start there. I got to start here with Nicole. Nicole and I, it's hard to remember when we first connected and became friends many, many years ago. We followed each other on LinkedIn, and then she invited me to be a guest on her podcast. And then we talked about the think tank. And I believe this was her first year, but 3 think tanks ago, Nicole came for her very first one. That's this image here. She had such a wonderful experience. I had a wonderful experience working with her. And so the next year, I was working on another think tank, and I naturally found myself wanting to ask for her advice. And that's one of the ways that you engage with your super fans, is that you engage them in the company. You ask for their advice, you take their advice, you put their advice into play. And that's how things started with Nicole. I found myself wanting to engage her sincerely. And she gave. She said, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this person for Think Tank? I have an idea for a facilitator." And it occurred to me as we were going through, she would make a great business partner. So then it elevated to that. So the following year, she joined in and became a part of the think tank, and she helped actually facilitate. She got paid from the think tank. It just grew and grew from there. And when I think about, now Nicole and I are very close friends. We do work together. We travel together to places, and she's been such an instrumental part of Think Tank. And I want to point out, she started out as a fan. She started out as an engaged customer, and then just kind of went up and up and up. And I'm not saying that all of your customers are eventually going to become your business partners, but that journey really models how you build people from a casual, like, okay, I know about your company, to steadily just being engaged if I want to contribute, to then being an evangelist. Like she's brought more people into the think tank than anybody else. And it's just because it's not because of what she believes about me. It's what I help her believe about herself. And I think that's what great companies do. they reflect the values of their customers, and that's how they become super fans. I've gone on to do events with people that have engaged with me through Think Tank. Basically everyone here on this screen has been to a Think Tank event. We did a South by Southwest event with all of these folks. Erin is so funny. She always puts on a Think Tank t-shirt whenever we have a Think Tank event or a call, but she also does it elsewhere. Jean and Angie, Jean and Erin, I think they were at a Good People retreat here. Angie missed the think tank last year. She paid to go. She couldn't make it. She paid for someone else to go. And she didn't get to experience the think tank last year. And I was like, oh my God, Angie's not going to come back. But she was like, "Nope, sign me up." So Angie's coming back for her next think tank. Um, Essentially, she will have paid for 4 seats at the think tank, and this will only be her second time experiencing the think tank. And yet, she is a super fan. Not because of anything about me, but because she believes that the think tank and what we do fully represents her. That's the only explanation for super fans. Um, Natalie has been to think tank events from the very beginning, and like every year, there's like a new person from 12 Oaks coming to the think tank, mostly because of Natalie. Kim and Mark Kentum have sponsored our shirts. That's what I'm wearing right now, the Think Tank 2025 shirt. I'll show you the back real quick. That's all you get. It's a quick teaser. When I had my TEDx event earlier this year, guess who showed up? Guess who I invited? Think Tank people. And these are some of the tips that, in order for you to create, cultivate, and retain super fans, you got to create special experiences. You got to have deep personal connections. I got to say, and I don't know where the line blurs on this. Um, a lot of the people on this screen I would consider friends. Technically, they're customers. They pay to go to the think tank. They've sponsored the think tank. They've put money from their pocket into ours and mine. So technically they're customers. But I I love so many of them, and it's transcended into friendships for many of these people. But I seek them out. I was in Houston earlier this week, and I just wanted to go talk to Paul. You know, Paul from ProCare. Paul Jarvis is great. I sincerely consider him a friend, and I'm also treating him like a super fan. So he consistently comes to Think Tank. He consistently advocates for it. And again, the only explanation for that is that he feels that the think tank reflects his values. So that's it. Shelby says, how do we get the shirt? You got to come to the think tank, which Shelby will be at a think tank eventually. She has some happy news that prevents her from being at the one this year, but you will get your shirt, Shelby, but it'll be next year. All right, we're going to round it out with the last topic here. Tough one, letting go. You know, those 2 words are probably impactful in any area of life. How do you let go? And with customers, it's a particularly tricky thing because they've entered the business transaction with you. You've committed to provide a service, and they are there. They're part of your organization. But how many of us have the experience of thinking, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have started the business relationship with that person? Your customers are your story. And I genuinely believe this, that who you serve reveals who you'll become as an organization. Um, there are some tough stories across all of the things that I do from a business perspective. And so I want to provide some tips here. Again, if we have 100 residents, 100 people that we have served at Bella Groves, 95, 96, 97 of them walk away feeling like, I mean, they use words like godsend. They're like, this was a godsend. It changed the trajectory of the story here for us and for my loved one. Um, and yet there are a handful, 3 that I can think of, that left their engagement with Bella Groves feeling like uh, we're the worst company, that I specifically, personally, am not a very good person. I can't control a lot of that. But in each of those cases, I did have to deal with this. How do we let them go? How do we move on from there? So I do want to go over a few tips here on when that happens, what I've done. Before I go into that seriousness, Michelle, thanks for being here. Michelle, this is kind of a bounce back to the earlier topic. Think Tank is uniquely connecting and collaborative. You can feel the open curiosity and willingness to shake things up that aren't working. Yeah, well said. Love that. Michelle's coming back for year two. Um, I dare say super fan as well. And what's really wonderful about people like Michelle is that there's no reason for them to come back for a second year unless they felt like that environment fully represented their values. And I say this a lot specifically about the think tank. Actually, I guess everything I do, but I say this about kind of the value exchange with your customers. At the think tank, I don't think of it so much as I'm creating this event and I want people to experience it. I feel like I'm kind of just safekeeping it for the people who are coming. It really is truly their event. It's their needs, it's their agenda, it's the stuff that they need to express from their hearts. And I'm just facilitating it. I've created the environment for it. And I'm just trying to be a good steward of that movement. But it is 100% their movement. So thanks, Michelle. Thanks for being on here and thanks for that comment. Okay, let's hop back into tips for letting go of customers. First one here, identify them early. I think, you have to trust your gut. I think in all of life, you probably can relate to this lesson about eventually when that relationship ends, you can probably pinpoint to when it started to fracture. Yeah, maybe that's hitting a little too close to home for personal reasons. But the thing is, we all have that experience. Friends that we had too long, relationships that we had too long, customers that we've kept too long. So I think one of the first things, of if we are repeatedly what we do, we have to find and identify the people early on that aren't advancing our story. If we're not marching together to tell the same story, then this isn't going to work out well. You have to have the courage up front to do this. Detractors, poor culture fits, specifically in senior living. I've had this very, very contrasted experience. When I was an executive director for a community, there was one customer who was just toxic. She yelled at us. She cussed at the caregivers. She demeaned the caregivers. And every time I, sent it up the chain, the response was they're a paying customer. You got to make it work. That's why you're the ED, and all of the. It just kind of put all of the pressure back on me to figure out they are not going to change their behavior. Um, Fast forward many, many years later, we did have a customer at Bella Groves that had a lot of these similar tendencies. Now, I want to say here an asterisk for this is that I know where that emotion is coming from. I'm not trying to validate that they were right here, but I know that that behavior comes deep, deep down from a place of they want to, advocate for their loved one, but also their behavior was not appropriate. And I think they were shocked when we eventually provided a 30-day notice of move out, specifically citing their relationship and their behavior toward staff. They were not happy, as you can imagine. The complaints to state are anonymous, but it was pretty clear when we had a state auditor a month or so later. There were 4 or 5 accusations of abuse, neglect, all sorts of things. The surveyor had to spend 3 days at our community because they're obligated to. Nothing, no substantiated evidence of those claims. Of course not. But that was something that we had to be able to stand in the face of, we're going to get some kind of retaliation, and we have to be able to stand up for that. And that's happened a couple of times at Bella Groves. But it can't discount all of the amazing people that we've served and the people who are hugging us at their mom's funeral, the ones who are coming to our community after their customer journey has ended and they're continuing a different story with us. Our lead volunteer at Bella Groves was a former family member of a resident that lived with us for less than 2 months. She's now our lead volunteer and coordinates our volunteer efforts. We have former family members who created a nonprofit fund to allow for families and members of our greater community to contribute to an employee assistance fund. I mean, it goes way beyond they want to wear our t-shirts. They want to support, uplift, and advance our mission. That's a callback to earlier. Number two, offer refunds. It's something that I've just kind of learned over the couple of experiences. If somebody is having a really, really bad experience with you, one, let them go. But two, final act of goodwill and hopeful reciprocity here. In the end, whatever dollar amount it is that you have the legal right to retain, give it. Give it out, you know? And in those cases where we have offered, a full refund for whatever the appropriate period of time was, yeah, it hurt. It hurt financially in the moment, but in the long run, if it saves you from a bogus lawsuit, if it saves you from dragging things out, um, give them a final act of goodwill. It's just a tip that I have. You don't have to follow it, but this is a little bit of a consistent thing that we do. Number three, communicate facts, not feelings. It is particularly important when you are separating with customers that you communicate facts. Like think about if you're breaking up with somebody, ending a friendship, it's natural to talk about feelings. This is how I feel. This is how you made me feel. But in the context of a business, I think it's particularly important you just stick to the facts. For us, we actually put into the contract at Bella Groves specific conditions that warrant a partnership ending. And it specifically talks about the customer's behavior. We specify things like abusive language to the staff or prohibiting care plan advancement. So, like we've had customers that are like, "Thanks for your suggestions. No, we don't want to do any of that." So there are specific facts and conditions that if you put in your agreement up front, if it comes time for you to part ways with that customer, you have specific things to reference and not just this isn't working out. So I would think about that. Look at your contracts and specifically put in clauses that talk to conditions that are not optimal and where you might, you know, um, choose to end that relationship. Fourth is probably the hardest. Let go of the narrative, right? We're human beings. If you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, or leader within an organization, it is hard to put aside the narrative of like, I'm the good guy, they're the bad guy. And when you really, really think about it, of course, they are the protagonists of their own story. But it doesn't mean that you have to become the villain. Just because they've cast you in the role doesn't mean you have to play that part. And it's something that in the moment when people are like slings and arrows, right? It is really hard as a human being to not defend myself. But you have to let go of the narrative. You have a bigger picture in mind. You have a story to serve. You are leading your organization. You have 100-year journey, not a 5-minute one. And in that 100-year journey, this customer who's hurling insults and attacking your character, it is not about you. And the narrative of trying to make that point known to your customer has no bearing on your 100-year story. So I think when you put it in context to that, just realize this is a little bit of empathy toward, those people who aren't a fit for you. They're the protagonists of their own story. And so it's as simple as accepting that and parting ways as easily as you can with their dignity intact. Let it go, right? They're the protagonists, so let them do that. um we rushed through this. I love the things that we were able to cover. If there's some comments, some feedback, some questions, some "Hey James, that makes no sense whatsoever why you would do that," put that in the comments too, because I want to hear that. But we are wrapping up here because we've all got a busy Friday. Be clear about your why, and you're going to get to the right who. When I think about this phase of life right now for me, in the think tank at Bella Groves and the work that I get to do with companies through my consulting work, and also speaking at conferences and events, the best thing that's happened for me over the last few years is that I've become very, very clear about my why. I do work related to identifying my own purpose. Shout out to Anna Hall. I do work related to my own contribution to each of these stories. And the point of leveling up, which is, the name of my podcast, kind of goes on and off. But the point of level up is to prepare yourself for the work that's going to come your way. It's not about ego. It's not about your ambitions, even. Leveling up, improving your business acumen, improving your relationship skills, improving your emotional intelligence skills. All of that is just to prepare you for the work. And customers are such an important part of that story. Um, there are so many times in senior living specifically where, I mean, if you put all of our customers in a room, I couldn't tell you one thing that connected them other than they paid their invoice to our company. When you look at a room full of your customers, you should feel so much connection of their story, their values, and their values should align with yours. And it's going to be slower. Let me tell you that up front. We could have filled up Bella Groves a year and a half ago. And from that perspective, revenue, operating margin, all of that, yes, it would have been a lot easier a year and a half ago, but we've been pretty methodical about it. And because we've been methodical about it, because we've been willing to endure the slowness of intentionality, we have some amazing stories. And those stories are going to snowball. Those experiences are going to snowball. The super fans are going to snowball. So when you do that, not only are you going to enjoy your work better, but I believe it'll expedite your work. Again, thinking about it as a 100-year journey, not a 1 year, 5 year. In that scope of things, choosing the right customers will accelerate your success. It'll bring you the right success. Um, Question, Shelby, let's put that up here. James, this was wonderful. I love the way that you go over the points, and this is super insightful. I'm just reading between the lines. How much time do you dedicate to learning this why? I feel like I either dive in too much or ignore the piece of my business and need to find a better balance. Man, that's a really good question. For me, working on the why, first of all, I would say it's such a critical piece that when your customers are fully engaged in your work, it is because you've done this work yourself of the why. Clear about your why, the who kind of takes care of itself. So, for myself, a couple of tips. It's just kind of an all the time kind of thing. I love reading. I know that's one of the ways that I engage most with new content, but then I have to assimilate that new knowledge as quickly as possible. So it's not so much for me about the frequency or what time do I do it. The behavior I commit to is when I absorb new knowledge, I have a very short window to go and apply that knowledge. And it's the only way you get better. It's the same thing here with why, I think, Shelby and others that may be feeling this question. I'll say this, I have never regretted an investment of time into my why. I can't account for how many hours, minutes I've put into those areas, but certainly there's not an ounce of regret in that. And I think the customers of each of my endeavors would feel that. And a couple slides earlier, Paul, who was on one of the slides for superfans, when I was leaving Houston when I was leaving my meeting with him, one thing he said was, "I can feel your passion about blank." It happened to be about facilitating like a workshop and helping people, get the most out of their own thoughts. And the truth is, passion, I think, misleads us a lot. Purpose never does. Purpose, when you're clear about, okay, I know I'm repeating myself here, so I'm just going to say it a different way. When you are clear about your purpose, you don't have to rely on passion. And I think that's one of the misnomers around our work, especially entrepreneurial work, is that you have to feel deeply passionate about everything you do all the time. You don't. We're human beings. We lose motivation. There are so many times when I'm like, I just don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this email. I don't want to do that call. And it's stuff that I feel passionate about in other ways. But what gets me moving, what puts my feet forward is purpose. I'm clear about my purpose and why this work matters to other people and to myself. And as a result, it keeps bringing the right customers to me. So that's it for Friday on our LinkedIn Live. I hope this was helpful. I hope there was some helpful things in here. As you're watching this, whenever you're watching it, I hope you'll still put your comments in, your questions in. put your feedback in. I'd love to engage with it over time. Um, that's all I've got. Oh, think tank. If you, I should give you a call to action. That's why I'm doing all of this. The think tank is mostly full for this year. We have 48 out of the 50 seats that are spoken for, and we've got some people that are still thinking it over. So chances are we'll have our full group here in the next week or two. It doesn't mean it's closed off entirely. If you've been thinking about this, if you've been following along this story, if you want to be around people who think this way, who have conversations like this, Think Tank is your place to do that. I promise you won't regret it. Well, I can't promise that. Actually, you may regret it. I promise that if the story resonates with you and it passes your gut feeling test of that sounds good for me, then I promise you won't regret it. There, I clarified. Have an amazing Friday, y'all. Thanks for joining me for this conversation. I hope you have a great weekend ahead. I'll see you for the next one. Bye.